So your dad's in crisis mode?
Oh boy, the people who listen every week know that our soul the building is coming along. Building is not his thing, and it's there's a lot of stress. Everybody's very stressed, but we are going to be there for Pesach, come hell or high water. The Seder is going to be in the new building, so that's how it's going.
Building's not his thing. You're saying Jews are not good at construction? That'll be news to everybody listening to the podcast.
This week's Torah portion.
I know.
Most successful capital campaign in history.
That's right. Exactly.
That's such a good point. Such a good point.
So we traded the bearded Jew for the clean-shaven Jew in the form of Sal Litvak, who also goes by the Accidental Talmudist online. You might have seen some of his content. So welcome to the show, Sal.
It's great to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. So, okay, I'm taking the first question, Jay, because I have a lot of questions.
I defer to the lady.
So I'm so curious about your journey, like your Jewish journey, basically. How did you grow up and how did you end up where you are? Jewishly, I'm saying.
You got it. So, first of all, to understand me, you have to understand I'm a freaky foreigner and an immigrant and a Jutino. I was born in Santiago de Chile, and Spanish is my first language. On my dad's side, my great-grandfather came from Ukraine. We don't know why he ended up in Chile when he fled the pogroms about 1905, but he did. And then my grandfather, my father, and I were all born in Chile. And I'm pretty sure I'm the only Salvador Litvak in the world. It's a good bet. But I'm not the first. My grandfather was also Salvador Litvak. And my mom was Hungarian, and absolute miracle story. As an infant, my grandmother carried her through a concentration camp. Imagine how difficult it is to have a baby anywhere, but to keep one alive in a concentration camp was a miracle. And then my grandfather on my mom's side perished at Dachau, and my grandmother it was one of those great loves, a love of the ages. And while she was very, happy for people who would, marry and start a family again after the war, people who lost spouses, for her, there was just only her. Her name was Magda, he was Imre, and there was only her Imre. And so she would wait for the rest of her life to be reunited with him in the world to come.
Wow.
The Hungarians escaped from Soviet Hungary in 1956. And ended up in Chile, again, followed a relative. We're not sure why that relative originally went to Chile. But in 1970, when a communist president was elected in Chile, the Hungarians said, yeah, no way. We've seen this story before. We're out. And that's how we ended up in the United States. And Jewishly, I ended up growing up in New City, New York, a suburb of New York City in Rockland County. In the Jewish world, everyone's heard of Muncie. New City is next door. When I grew up there, it was all Jewish, no Orthodox, no Frum at all. That's changed quite a bit, I've heard. But I went to a big conservative synagogue, Hebrew school, 3 days a week. I had a bar mitzvah, and then I was done. I was very uninspired and kind of bored. And it's very sad because I was always interested in God. It just, it's funny, from my little child's perspective, who was kind of into science, it made no sense to me that there would be a big bang and a universe full of stuff for no reason, just randomly. That made no sense to me. So I said, okay, well, there must be a creator, and the creator must be interested in the creatures and would appreciate if the creatures are interested in him. So I was always curious about God, but the Judaism that I was exposed to as a kid was not really about God. It was about kind of chores and obligations, and I guess you could call it ethical monotheism. But it wasn't really what I was into. And it's over the ensuing years as a teenager and a college student, I was a seeker, a spiritual seeker for sure, but not to other religions, more other practices. So I got into meditation, endurance sports. I was a rower in college, which very much has a spiritual side to it when the 8 guys are all in a perfect unison. There's something that comes alive in the room or in the boat, so to speak.
It's your minion.
It's your minion. There you go. With the coxswain makes 9 and the coach makes 10.
There you go.
But and I'll tell a joke later, since I collect the greatest Jewish jokes of all time, about when Yeshiva University gets a rowing team. But we'll come back to that. But I was into Grateful Dead shows. I mean, I was definitely looking for this sense of other, drumming circles. And I just thought that Judaism wasn't about that. There was maybe one chance when I could have connected, because in college, I was an English major and I took a course called The Bible is Literature. And we read the Bible the way you would read Shakespeare, analyzing it as a piece of literature. And we read it cover to cover, including the sequel, so to speak. And then there were stories in the Bible, in Tanakh, right, that they never taught us in Hebrew school. Like the Dinah and Shechem story in Genesis 34, which really does not make the Jews look good. Right. And I was like, how could this be our origin story? It doesn't make the Jews look good. But I had no rabbi in my life to discuss it with. And actually, the first chance I got was shortly after college. A friend of mine got married. He was a Jewish guy. He was marrying a non-Jewish girl. And they found a rabbi to perform this ceremony. And the reception was in this beautiful place overlooking the ocean, outdoors, peninsula, towering eucalyptus trees, ravens in the trees, beautiful table settings. And at one point I found the rabbi sitting by himself, and I walked over and I said, "May I join you?" "Sure." "Rabbi, I have a question. In Genesis 34, it says that Jacob and his family came back to the promised land, and Dinah went out and she met the prince of this town, Shechem, and he seduced her or he raped her. Not good, but he fell in love with her and wanted to marry her. And he and his father, the king, negotiated with Jacob and his sons. And they said, yeah, okay, your daughters can marry our sons and vice versa, but you guys have to get circumcised." And so this prince was apparently an amazing salesman. He convinced all his countrymen to do this. And then while they were recovering from their circumcisions, Shimon and Levi went in at night and killed all the men and took all the women and children as slaves along with the animals. And they left a ghost town. And the Jews moved on. So, Rabbi, how does this make the Jews look good? And at the very moment that I completed the question, make the Jews look good, this big raven in the towering eucalyptus tree dropped a massive bird poop on my shoulder.
You're kidding.
Splat. And the rabbi
That's hilarious.
looked at the poop and said, "There's your answer." And he got up and walked away. Now, that's a very sad... I actually tell that story when I talk to like Chabad rabbis at conventions and stuff. And I say, this was a disastrous encounter because, first of all, I don't know about the so-called rabbi that was marrying a Jew to a non-Jew to begin with. But aside from that, here's a Jew expressing curiosity about the Torah. And I'm coming from a really heartfelt place. Like, I really want an answer to my question. And he offered me nothing. And it would be another 10 years before I would reconnect and become a Baal Tshuva and get back to my roots. And so I always tell rabbis, you never know. You might be having an off day. Maybe he needed to go to the bathroom. I don't know. But, you get that one chance with a Jew who wants to reconnect. You gotta offer him something. Mm-hmm. And truthfully, that story doesn't make us look good. That's not the purpose of that story, is to look good.
It's
and
interesting.
Our forefather Jacob didn't think it made us look good.
But it's interesting.
Curious.
It's interesting that you choose that story and think that it doesn't make the Jews look good, because I've always struggled with that story, because I feel Jacob comes out looking really bad in that story. And I've always struggled with his character because of that story. And I think I've
Interesting.
changed a little bit over the years, maybe to understand maybe that it truly was a love story. But certainly when I was a teenager learning Chumash in school and we learned that story, I'm like, how could her father sell her down the road? Like I resented Jacob so much over that specific story. So it's interesting that you mentioned that because I just had a different view.
Listen, it's the Bible. There's not going to be any story that doesn't have multiple levels at which it works.
Right.
But he was furious about what happened to the end of his days. I mean, on his deathbed, he was reminding his sons that they went the wrong way there. And Levi and the tribe of Levi, and I'm a Levi, made a tshuva. And they learned and grew from it, and Shimon didn't. You know, and that was a problem for Shimon and his descendants. But it would be 10 more years. And so what ultimately happened is I, kept looking for other kinds of spiritual practices. I ended up finishing college, going to law school, worked as a lawyer for a year and a half, knew that wasn't for me. Was blessed to find my way to film school at UCLA, MFA director's program, got out here, realized, oh, thank God I didn't miss this. I should be making movies. And then a few years into film school, I got the call from my mom, come home, and my grandmother Magda was on her deathbed. She was in hospice care, and it was near the end. And I came home, and I was sitting beside her, with my mother next to me and my brother next to her, when my grandmother took her last breath. And, you don't always know when a dying person is taking the last breath.
Right.
But in this case, we knew. And we're all crying. And then something pulled my attention away from my grandmother's face to the middle of the room. And it was like the air shimmered and something opened. And then I was like looking through this opening, and she, not sick with cancer, but this wonderful, older, hilarious woman that I knew who, lived in my house all my life and cooked this amazing Hungarian and, goulash and baked these apple cakes. And we were just so close. And she was moving away from me and towards someone, and it was my grandfather that I recognized from photographs. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the moment she's been waiting for 53 years, to be reunited with her Bishert. And she doesn't want to go. I'm like, why doesn't she want to go? I don't get it. And then I did get it. She's embarrassed. He's this young, handsome man. Like the last time she saw him in 1943, she's an old lady, and she feels like, he's going to reject me. But he reached out, pulled her hands to him. They embraced. It got brighter. Then she was young again. And then there was just this love-drenched, unbelievable moment. It got really bright, and then they were gone.
Wow.
And I'm there with my jaw hanging open, like, what have I just seen? I'm not a person who sees things. I didn't know what to make of it. When I got back to LA, I said, well, I need to honor her. I guess I'll go to a synagogue and say Kaddish. That's what Jews do. So I went to a big conservative synagogue like what I grew up in. And thank God the rabbi there was a gifted speaker and teacher. And I thought, well, this thing I've been looking for, maybe I should try my own backyard. And I started taking classes in LA. There's wonderful rabbis here, as I'm sure you know, Haile.
Yeah.
And I met Schwartzy, who I'm sure you also know.
Of course, yeah.
And he became a mentor, and classes at the University of Judaism and around town. And every rabbi who ever talked about anything mentioned the Talmud. So I was like, okay, the Talmud, which now I know it's the oral tradition. It's Genesis at Mount Sinai, the oral Torah and the written Torah given together. But then it just seemed to me it's clearly full of wisdom, where we tend to be a smart people, and we've been adding to this fountain of wisdom for thousands of years. That's worth looking into. But when I would go to the mitzvah store on Pico Boulevard to get a a gift or a prayer book or some, object of ritual than my, growing interest in Judaism, I would see the Art Scroll Talmud. And for people who are old enough to remember Encyclopedia Britannica, which was 23 volumes, The Wisdom of Humanity, here's the Art Scroll Talmud, 73 volumes, The Wisdom of the Jews. It's so vast. It's written in Hebrew and Aramaic. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I didn't go to yeshiva. I wouldn't know where to open this thing. I don't even know if I'm allowed. Like I heard, Kabbalah, you have to be 40. I was, I think, 32 at this time. Maybe the Talmud, you have to be a rabbi. Who knows? And I would just walk away intimidated. So my grandmother died in 1997. Over the next 8 years, a dozen times, I was in that store, thought about the Talmud, got intimidated, walked away. And then in 2005, I was in that store, went through that same thought process. Yeah, really curious, but maybe I'm not even allowed, walk away. And then something stopped me. And I said, this is ridiculous. They're just books. I was an English major in college. My wife and I are book people. Our house is full of books. There must be a book one of the Talmud. I'll just get that and see what it's like. So I figured out from the nearest book, table of contents, okay, book one of the Talmud is called Brachos, blessings. Here's a Brachos. Take it off the shelf, walk to the counter. Now I'm feeling up on myself. I'm buying the Talmud. And the kid at the counter says, you're doing Daf Yomi. So I said, what's Daf Yomi? Your listeners listen to this podcast. They don't watch it, right? So this is what the guy did to me.
It's more listen, yeah.
Yeah, it's more listen, but we do have a YouTube channel also.
Yeah.
Okay. So what he said to me when I said, what's Daf Yomi, is first he goes like this. And he lowered his glasses sort of to the tip of his nose to look over his glasses and get a good look at me. As if to say, are you kidding? And I thought, well, I guess Daf Yomi's a code. If you don't know the code, you're not allowed to read the books. Now he's got to get rid of me without embarrassing me. It's so awkward. And he said Daf Yomi in Hebrew means page of the day. And it's a program where people around the world read the entire Talmud on the same schedule, 1 page a day. It takes 7.5 years. And today is day 1.
You're kidding.
I am not kidding.
Oh my gosh.
Now, this would have been incredible if it was month 1 of Daf Yomi. It would have been miraculous if it was week 1.
Right.
But it was, in fact, day
That's
1
crazy.
of a 7.5 year cycle. And I said, okay, I'll take it. And then later, God, I get the message. I'm doing Daf Yomi. So, Chile, a lot of people start Daf Yomi and they look like your dad, right?
Yeah.
With the hat and the beard and the coat.
Yeah.
And they went to yeshiva. And even they don't finish Daf Yomi because it's such a big commitment. It's an hour a day, every day for 7.5 years. You're getting married, you're on vacation, you're sick, it's Yom Kippur. Doesn't matter. Do your Daf. And I felt like God put the book in my hand, so I can't stop. And I stayed with it. In the beginning, I couldn't even go to a class. They said there's classes in Hebrew or Yiddish or English, but you go to the English class, half of the words from the rabbi's mouth are in Hebrew or Aramaic. This is the jargon of Talmud.
Right.
And I didn't know the jargon. So I really had to learn by myself with Rabbi Art Scroll, shall we say, for 3 years. Then I went to a class again, and I could follow the jargon, which was very gratifying. And then in 2012, I completed Shas. I completed the Daf Yomi journey.
Wow.
And I went to the Siyum HaShas, the celebration at Giant Stadium in New Jersey with 93,000 Jews. And we all danced a hora, and I couldn't help but think, Nazis filled stadiums to celebrate they're going to destroy our people and burn all our books. And those bastards are gone from this world. And here we are, celebrating such a big dance party of our unbroken wisdom tradition. And I'm sorry to tell my story so long, but to wrap this up.
No, it's great.
At that point, I called my friend David Suissa, the publisher of the Jewish Journal, and took him to lunch. He was a big fan of our first movie, When Do We Eat? And I told him this story, and I said, if I wrote that up, would you publish it? He says, Sal, that's a cover story for the Jewish Journal. And it was. But he said, don't you have more to say than fits in one article after 7.5 years of study? I said, I guess. He says, write a column for us. So it was a column called Accidental Talmudist. To promote that, we started a Facebook page, kind of in the early days of Facebook. And I never would have imagined how it just took off.
Wow.
And Facebook was nice because instead of an 800-word column, one day it could just be a saying, a wisdom saying, something from Pirkei Avos. Another day I go live at a concert. I had Matisyahu in my backyard interviewing him and playing music. Podcasts, videos, jokes. I started telling Jewish jokes. My wife started writing Thursday Heroes, stories of unsung heroes of the Jewish people. And the thing just took off, and we, eventually 1 million followers on Facebook, a couple 100,000 on Instagram. Interestingly, probably a little more than half of our followers are not Jewish.
Wow.
They tend to be Christian and very intrigued by Jews who take Judaism seriously, and who study Torah and share what they learn, in an authentic manner. And I guess maybe the main thing that my wife and I, because we're entertainers, we're filmmakers, but so we're communicators. And maybe the main thing that we offer is we're Orthodox Jews who really love Torah and Yiddishkeit, and communicate that love clearly without the jargon. Usually to get this kind of authentic teaching, they just assume so much knowledge in the listener that for the people without a background like I was, you can't follow it. Like that first day that I went, to that Daf Yomi Shir. And so if we have a secret sauce, it's that we make it accessible to everyone without dumbing it down.
That's awesome. That's
great.
awesome.
That's
I know.
Great.
That's my Jewish journey.
I love it.
Oh, that's incredible. That's terrific. So you're saying there's still hope for me.
Oh, yeah. What, are you kidding? Look at you running this podcast. You're having a big impact.
Exactly. So this might be like asking a Beatles fan what their favorite Beatles song is, but I'll ask it. I'll ask anyway. Was there a particular part of the Talmud that had some particular impact on your life, that just sort of, when you think back to your experience of doing Daf Yomi, your mind sort of goes to this thing that just resonated with you, especially?
That's a wonderful question. There are certainly stories that stood out to me in the Talmud. I tend to appreciate the Agadata, the kind of stories of the sages and folk tales and folk wisdom, sometimes a little bit more than the halakhic, the legal debates. And there's a wonderful story of Rabbi Eliezer challenging the other sages, and the oven of Achnai story. We can go into that.
We just talked about that on a previous episode.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
We literally just talked about this about 2 weeks ago.
Great. So your audience
That's
has the
good.
background.
Yeah.
But what I would say is, while those stories stood out to me, Daf Yomi can be a grind, right? There are long stretches in the Talmud where you can't call it inspiring. You know what I mean?
Right.
When you're
Right.
when you're spending 3 weeks kind of like parsing through the logic of which relatives are prohibited because it's the sister-in-law of the sister-in-law, who doesn't remain a sister-in-law because there's another marriage. That's, and it's just logic. It really is just keeping the logic straight. But in those long stretches, what I was impressed by was the passion of Chazal, the passion of our sages, right? Like, to them, there was no aspect of human life that didn't have Torah in it, right? So the way you go to the bathroom, the way you draw up a contract, the way you walk, the way you go to sleep, the way you talk, for sure, and the ways that we try to refine our speech. But even the stuff that is just so the minutiae and what people would make fun of Talmudic scholars for spending so much time, parsing logic that could never have a real world implication. But sort of you take a step back and ask, what are these guys doing? It's like, well, it's Torah and I must learn it, right? God is speaking to us in every corner of our lives. So that kind of passion impressed me. And it's funny, I just thought I was, grinding it out and keep going. But a friend of mine, who I've been friends with for a very long time, he was actually a coxswain on the rowing team in college, and we've just stayed close over all these years. And he said that, well, I heard what you told me when you started this journey. And then I sort of checked in on you when you finished that journey. And you are different, Sal. I'm like, what are you talking about? And it's just me. He says, no, you changed. You became more thoughtful. You became a little more sensitive. You became a little more, interested in other people and how you could be, helping them solve their problems. And I thought, well, no, I'm always one. I've always been one to give advice. I'm happy to give advice. I love giving advice. No, but it's not the same. It's not the same. And so there's just something about being engaged in that journey that refines you because you're spending so much time in the company of refined people, our sages. But maybe to answer your question just a little bit more concisely, it's not really the Talmud, but Pirkei Avos, right? The sayings of the fathers, the ethics of the fathers, is really the oral tradition's greatest hits. It's a collection of Mishnahs, not Gemara. That's why it's not in the Talmud journey, the Daf Yomi journey. But if somebody said, give me some Jewish wisdom, drop of a hat, then I would say, well, good to know that our sages say, who is rich? One who is content with his portion. Who is wise? One who learns from every person. Who is honored? One who honors others. And who is strong? One who conquers his impulse. There's plenty to think about right there.
That is.
You could drop that at the supermarket checkout line.
That's great. Did you do Daf Yomi a second time, or did you do it the one time and then stop, or how does that work?
So yes and no and yes. Meaning, when I completed the journal, I'm like, oh my God, thank God I finished. I'm not doing it this time. So then starting in 2012, we were focused on building Accidental Talmudist and teaching and sharing teachings from the Torah, the hero stories, the holidays, the humor, just building the platform. But then 7.5 years after that, in 2020, the next time the Daf Yomi cycle came around, somebody that I had met through the platform said, Sal, you should teach Daf Yomi.
Oh,
and I'm teach Daf Yomi? Who am I to teach Daf Yomi? I am not a rabbi. I have no right, that makes no sense. He said, well, why don't you just try? What could it hurt? Maybe someone will pay attention and appreciate that the way you communicate about other things, you can communicate this. I don't know. I thought about it. The cycle was coming up anyway. I said, maybe I'll just try to focus on a few ideas from the daily daf. And so I started teaching it in 2020 with the new cycle, teaching it online, first Facebook, then Facebook and YouTube. And very quickly, from just trying to teach a few concepts from that day's page, I was like, no, the students want the page.
Oh.
So yeah, now I teach Daf Yomi on Facebook and YouTube, Sunday through Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific, Fridays at noon Pacific, Saturday when Shabbos ends in LA.
Wow.
Live on YouTube and Facebook, and you can find it on our website and our app.
That's awesome.
App. And I get about probably 2,000 to 2,500 views a day.
Wow.
Not everybody is sitting for the whole hour.
Right, but they're getting some of it.
Yeah.
But a bunch of people are. So I have my regulars.
Yeah.
And again, first of all, there's a lot of women in the class. You don't find women in Daf Yomi classes so much. I have multiple non-Jews in the class. I actually asked, Rabbi Tauber here is a big Dayan in LA, is it okay to teach Daf There are non-Jews in the class? He said, absolutely, as long as there's Jews in the class, you can teach Daf.
That's amazing.
And we're all on this journey together. And so we're now in our 5th year,
Wow.
2.5 years to go.
That's awesome.
Amazing. That's amazing.
Can I ask a question about the learning? So because I come from a very Orthodox, Chabad background, I learned Torah in a very specific way, I would say. And then professionally, as I got older and I started working in more liberal Jewish spaces, so the learning was very different. And it took me some time to adapt to like this idea that I could like disagree with Maimonides or, disagree with the rabbis and think that maybe they were making a mistake. And I'm curious, as someone who came to this as an older person, didn't have, kind of the background that I came from, like, how do you deal with the things that you maybe disagree with or you find challenging? How does that work for you?
So I guess I always approach that. First of all, when you're teaching, let's say liberal Jews, religiously liberal Jews, and non-Jews, and you're teaching Sanhedrin, and it's
Right.
like, well, the court will impose a death penalty if a Jew kills another Jew, but not if he kills a non-Jew.
Right.
Like, whoa.
Right.
How am I going to teach that?
Right.
And of course, I'll always mention, but we also say, Dina de Malchus Dina, the law of the land is the law.
Right.
So no, it's not okay to kill a non-Jew. The question is there a law in the Torah that covers that? And the sages are so reluctant to impose a death penalty for anything. They'll find any excuse not to impose a death penalty. So there's things like that. But definitely I always start with, okay, God wrote this, and our sages interpreted it with tremendous care and devotion. So if it's sitting bad in my craw, if I can't deal with it, I need to examine myself first. Like, what is it that I'm objecting to? What is it that I'm having trouble with? And so, and I still might disagree, but I'll disagree respectfully. I think it's very important. And that whole idea of civil discourse, it was so important to our sages.
Yeah.
I think what could be more important in America today that's so divided than a teaching like, I think it's Eruvin 13, Hillel and Shammai, the students of Hillel and the students of Shammai disagreed so passionately, so angrily, and for a long time on many issues. And then finally a voice from heaven came and said, these and these are the words of the living God. They both had proper investigations of what the law holds in these various areas on which they disagree. But the law is according to Beis Hillel, the students of Hillel. Why? Because they were easy and forgo their honor, and they state the opinions of their opponents before their own. Right? Like, we could go so far in creating civil discourse in America if somebody you disagree with, whatever political party you're in, whatever the issue is, if you're able to state the position of your opponent in a way that your opponent would say, yes, that's my position.
Right.
And then you talk about the issue. That's a very different conversation than we're having in America today.
Right.
Where people will not even state the position of the other side, let alone do so without sarcasm and respectfully.
That's a great point.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. So I'll one other question about your, less on Daf Yomi and Talmud, but more on your religious journey. So you're Baal Teshuva, like we talked about. How was that when you said, I want to start becoming more religious, keeping kosher, wearing yarmulke, whatever practices that you have, what was the response from your wife, your family, your friends? Like, how was that transition?
So first of all, my journey would not have been possible if my wife and I weren't on it together. I'm very blessed in that. Now she was always quick to say she had even less background than I. She had the only Jewish background she had was that in her home growing up, there was no Christmas tree. That was it.
That's
But
funny.
her
It's
parents are
not
both
that start.
Jewish. But her parents are both Jewish and they were artists. Her mom is still an artist. Her father has left the world. But they were artists living in Soho in Manhattan before Soho was a mall, right? When only artists lived there. In a loft, where they had to add a bathroom. Just a very different way to grow up than like my suburb, all Jewish suburb experience. But Nina was always genuinely curious. And so the year that my grandmother died was the year that Nina and I met. And we've just been on this journey together. And just always learning. And sometimes one a little bit ahead of the other. She took a kind of birthright for mom's trip, an ACE trip early on. She was very inspired. She probably would have wanted us to come Orthodox or at least Shomer Shabbos right then. I was a little bit reticent just because at that point we had an interesting synagogue that we were going to, kind of a kooky place. I would call it Reform Hasidic.
I love that. Yeah.
A lot of celebrities. But it was a place that we would drive to on Shabbos. So like early on, I mean, Shabbos became very important to us. We were always having a Shabbos dinner. We were always going to shul. But we were driving there, and maybe we were still cooking, after candlelighting, and it was just a very spiritual and important to us. But we were not yet Shomer Shabbos, and but then that shul we realized we were more religious than the rabbi. So then we went to a conservative shul in LA where our kids went to the day school, and they at least would learn Hebrew, which is definitely important to us. And then over time, we were realizing, yeah, we're just more religious than the other people in this community. And we were living here in Hancock Park in LA, which is a very frum community. And I was already just starting to daven in the local, Hasidic shtibels. And it was just very organic. But I mean, it was something that Schwartzy, my great mentor, Schwartzy, who came from Chabad and created his organization, High Center. And he said, listen, the most important thing is not where you are on the ladder, but what direction you're moving in. And, some people, I think it's great. And if possible, yeah, if you're really inspired, you can become Orthodox, do it. But it's also true that some people who go too fast burn out. And for us, it was almost like every mitzvah that we took on, we thought about it, it was meaningful to us. We added it into our lives. And then at a certain point, we realized that there was only like one thing missing. It was the urn. We had to have the urn in the kitchen. The Shabbos
coffee, hot water. Yes,
exactly.
That's great.
And so I guess it's been about 10 years that we've been, fully in.
I
think what you said at the end is really it's a great message that I'll never be as religious as Chailea or her father or her family or probably you, Sal, but I can do more than what I'm doing today, which is certainly more than I was doing a year ago.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Beautiful.
So I think that's a good, we're not, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Right. Right. Can I ask?
I heard something very, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Let me just share this quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just quick. Because I heard something very beautiful. Rabbi Zilberstein in Israel, who's one of the great Gadol, one of the great rabbis of the generation that people go to with any kind of legal questions. And one of the hostages was a mother and son, and the mother was freed early, like after 50 days. And, these are people from like a border town, the kibbutz town, very secular, not religious people. But then she became religious as she was praying for her son to be freed, and went to this Rabbi Zilberstein and said, please give me a blessing that my son should be freed safely. And he gave her the blessing and started praying with her and was praying every day. And her son was freed, just a few weeks ago after like 500 days of captivity. I think they're Russian Jewish. And so he came to see the great rabbi. And this boy who was not religious, the rabbi said to him, "Thank God you're free. God freed you. God saved you. And now you have a responsibility. And I want you to bring Shabbos into your life." And he said, "Yes, Rabbi, I'm ready." And he said, "Great. You don't have to do everything immediately, but here's how you should start. Don't drive and don't turn lights on and off."
Wow.
And I thought that was fascinating, like if you can't take all of Shabbos on immediately, what are you going to start with? Don't drive. Okay, so now you're in a very different mindset. You're not going to break that addiction to your phone if you have trouble getting rid of the phone on Shabbos. Okay, you don't have to do that immediately. But don't drive and don't turn lights on and off, because that's so much like sort of going back to the basics of what's in the Torah. Don't kindle a fire in your dwellings on Shabbos. And it's so doable, right? Like you don't have to drive on Shabbos, but if you don't turn lights on and off, that requires some thought and some planning. And it's just a beautiful way to start.
I love that. I'm just as great as that rabbi, I think, because I told Jay also he should pick a few things for Shabbos. Maybe we're the same. I'm just kidding.
Yes.
Just kidding.
Oh man.
But actually, maybe I'm doing it the wrong order. But the first thing I did actually was stop touching my phone.
Yeah.
I think that's the best. I was just
is.
surprised that he didn't say that.
Yeah.
I bet you Rabbi Zilberstein
so
doesn't
good.
have a phone. He probably doesn't have a cell phone and doesn't realize.
He definitely doesn't have a smartphone.
Exactly.
No way.
That's what he doesn't realize probably. Wait,
no one calls him anyway.
Exactly. I want to drill down on one piece though before we move on, because I think a lot of our listeners would be interested in just like the technical details of how a person can go from having no yeshiva background and being able to study Talmud. So I'm just curious, like, do you do it in English? Like just for yourself, like when you started, were you just doing English, but now you do both? Or do you still kind of focus on the English side of it and not worry about the Aramaic and Hebrew? I'm just like, technically, how does it work for people who might be curious?
So we're blessed to live in a generation that has so many tools and assets that our ancestors didn't have. And not just, digitally and Sefaria and then Chabad.org for that matter. So many resources available digitally. But if you look at the Art Scroll Talmud, so, I guess the Schottenstein family and other families, I mean, I think they spent something like $40 million creating that Talmud. So it's not just a translation; it's an elucidation.
Right.
And so when you read the Art Scroll Talmud, first of all, just the translation, there's about twice as much language inserted into it, because the Talmud itself is written in code in the sense that it's very dense. It was meant to be memorized. It was never meant to be written down.
Right.
And so it's almost like a song. It's like song lyrics. And to understand, the poetry of a song, you need a great professor explaining it to you and the context and what's intended and what's being referred to. And that's all incorporated right into the inline translation, which, like I said, expanded as an elucidation. Then there's the footnotes. And that's why a page of Talmud takes an hour. I mean, it's like 10 pages of small print text that's referring you to all kinds of other places. So, if you're somebody who loves learning, it's just endless. There's so much to learn every day in each page. And it would not have been possible if all you had was even just a straight translation. It's this wonderful compendium, the original hyperlinks, hyperlinking to other areas of Jewish endeavor. So that's what makes it possible. Now, when I teach it, I'll sometimes use the Art Scroll, but I actually use the Koran for teaching, which is based on Rav Steinsaltz and his translation and elucidation of the Talmud. And it's just, I would say, a little bit more user-friendly. But only, like, the main thing that I like about it is it has pictures that I could show my audience, because I'm live on video every day. And also, when a question of halacha comes up, the Art Scroll doesn't tell you where the law ended up, right? The sages are debating what the law should be, but then, like, what is the law? That's in Shulchan Aruch. That was codified later. And the Koran translation includes those halachic notes. So whenever you have a curiosity of where the law ended up from this debate, it tells you. It's a little bit more
interesting.
usable for the
Right.
class that I teach.
That's awesome. Okay, good.
That's great.
Maybe one day I'll try it.
Yes. Maybe we can do it together at the start of next cycle.
Yeah, we'll see. No promises.
Now, what I'm going to do next, when this cycle ends, I do have a plan. When this cycle ends, I'm not going to renew actually and start the Talmud over again. My plan is to then start teaching the Torah.
Oh.
I'm just going to teach the Torah or Tanakh, the whole Bible, and with God's help for the rest of my life, because I'm not going to be on a schedule. I'm not going to do a page a day or a chapter a day. I'm going to do as much as Sal Litvak can do in a day.
That's awesome.
And some days it'll only be a few words, and some day it'll be a few verses, maybe some days a whole chapter. But I'm going to just move at my own pace, and I'm very excited about that. And I mean, I never expected to be doing this every day for 7.5 years. I mean, teaching it. And the Talmud is not what I would call like the best entry point for Judaism and Jewish learning for most people, but the Bible is. And so I'm excited in 2027 to start teaching the Bible every day. That's what AT Daily will be.
That's awesome.
That's great. So with all it'll be amazing for our listeners who don't know your biography, that it seems like you must spend all of your time just doing Jewish things, but you are also a filmmaker. And so could you tell us a little bit about your background with filmmaking and what brought you to that and some of your work, those types of things?
Sure. So, as briefly as possible, when we got to this country, my parents sort of asked around, being Jewish immigrants, what do you do in America if you want to be successful? And so they heard that you should go to Harvard and be a doctor. So they said to me, Sal, you're going to go to Harvard and be a doctor. And I was 5 years old. So I said, okay.
No pressure.
No pressure. And I just never thought about what do I want to be? Who am I? What am I supposed to do in this world? Then when I was in college, I was a pre-med, but I didn't like that. I was primarily a rower, just very involved in that athletic life. I got decent grades, but I wasn't going to be a doctor. So in their book, if you're not going to be a doctor in America, you're going to be a lawyer. So I went to law school. And I went to NYU Law School. And when I was in the Village in New York City, which is one of the great artistic centers of the world, I got very serious about who am I? What am I supposed to be doing in this world? And my heroes were novelists, so I thought I would write novels. But then a friend of mine went to film school, and I was like, film school? What's that? He said, what do you mean, what is it? You learn how to direct movies. I did not know that was possible. When I'd seen student films at my undergrad, they were like pretentious art films, like not watchable, so boring. But like movies in a movie theater, who gets to direct those? I was like, I don't know, children of celebrities. I mean, who gets the job like that?
Right.
But now apparently there's a path, and it's called film school. So I said, I want that. And I had no business getting in. UCLA Film School for that program was going to get 700 applicants and accept 18 people.
Whoa.
So how am I going to get in? But one thing I learned in law school is how to get a job, how to campaign for a job. And like I researched and found out which professors would be doing the interviews and learned about them, in the library. This is before the internet. And so one thing that's good advice for anybody, especially young people, like if you're trying to get a job, so you need to know whose office you're walking into and what their problems are, what their ambitions and successes, and especially what their problems are, so that you can try to be a solution to their problems, and you want to get them talking about themselves, because people will not remember what was said in an interview, but if they talked about themselves, they'll remember it was a very intelligent conversation.
That's a great tip for my students.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I taught my way into UCLA Film School, and thank God I did, because as soon as I got there, it's like, oh, this is what I was meant to do. I love it. But I was very focused on, not making angst-ridden films, which is what most student films are, but really learning how to make a movie that will play in a movie theater. That's what I want to do. And and Nina and I met around that time, and we had a lot of false starts. It's very difficult to get a movie off the ground. I always tell people, avoid putting yourself in a position where someone else is going to give you a green light. Just find a way to do it yourself. And eventually it came together, and we made our first movie, When Do We Eat? You could tell that we were on a Jewish journey. We were not yet Orthodox. It's a very irreverent and raucous comedy about a Passover Seder gone completely awry, in which one of the kids doses dad with a very strong hallucinogen. But there's a lot of brokenness in the family, and the wisdom of the sages offers, pathways and for healing in the family, and they really go through hell, but eventually there's real growth and spiritual growth for the family. It was Jack Klugman's last role, Michael Lerner, Les Van Warren. I discovered Max Greenfield, Ben Feldman, Shiri Appleby was in it, Mark Ivany, Amelia Avitan. It's an amazing cast. Tough movie to make. We thought it would be my big fat, Jewish Seder after My Big Fat Greek Wedding had been a very big hit. And the movie played at Jewish film festivals and other festivals for a year. Audiences loved it. And we were very excited when it was opening in theaters in April, right before Passover 2006. And we thought this is going to be a big hit, and it's going to put us on the map. And then the first sign of trouble was the New York Times review. And followed closely by the Washington Post. Now, if they had said, mediocre film, not funny, poorly directed or something like that, okay, well, then it would be on me. But that's not what they said. What they said was, this movie is offensive. Offensive. And the Washington Post said, if the makers weren't Jewish, these people would be considered anti-Semites.
Oh my God.
What?
And you've seen the movie, right?
Yeah.
What planet were they on? Now, maybe it's not news to you guys that there's a lot of influential intellectuals in America who are very anti-religion, right? Anti-faith. So
I've heard that. I've heard that rumor.
Yeah. So a movie that says that Jews can behave badly, and when they do, the Jewish tradition and Jewish faith has something to offer them that can be of great utility to the family, and do that in a kind of mainstream comedy, that somehow it's off narrative and it bothers them, and they can't quite express what they don't like. So they just find something to attack.
Oh my God.
And that's what they did. And the thing is, now this is long before Rotten Tomatoes, but the critics all read each other.
Yeah.
And it was like the New York Times kind of sets the tone and the narrative, and then everyone else kind of echoes it with similar types of words. And it wasn't everybody. There were a lot of positive reviews in more conservative publications, let's say, in more red states type of cities, interestingly enough. But, if you're basically bringing an art house film that's not 2,000 theaters, major studio release, you need, or at least back then, you needed the critics to help you, or the Jews in New York and LA and, Miami aren't going to go to the movie if the New York Times haven't given the blessing. And so the theatrical run, didn't last long. It's funny, by today's standards, it would have been successful, but back then it was a flop.
Yeah.
Grossed under $1 million. And we got a lousy DVD deal. And that was it. It was over. It was like
Oh my gosh.
this massive failure. And, our investor lost money, and we weren't on the map, and it was a disaster. And we just, we were so crestfallen. I mean, we were so depressed. It was really awful. Now, what's interesting about it is that our dream going into it was that this will become the Jewish It's a Wonderful Life. It's a holiday movie, and Jews around the world will watch it every year as Passover is approaching. It has something to say about Passover. And obviously that dream was dead. But we went on with our lives. Eventually we made another movie about Abraham Lincoln called Saving Lincoln. And now, I should mention, I'm wearing a Guns N' Moses hat, and we have an unbelievable Jewish movie, action thriller, coming out this summer about a beloved small-town rabbi whose community is violently attacked and forces him to become a gunfighter, a very unlikely gunfighter, but a serious one, in order to defend his community and investigate the crime and find out what's really going on. Starring Mark Feuerstein, Neil McDonough, Christopher Lloyd, and Dermot Mulroney, as well as Alona Tal, and Jake Busey, and Craig Sheffer, and other amazing
Mulroney,
cast.
wow.
Yes.
Wait, you got me. Stop right there. When is this ready? No, I'm just kidding.
So it's coming out this summer. The release date's going to be finalized like in the next week or two, but it's going to be like late June or July.
Awesome.
300 theaters, screens across America.
Cool.
It's going to be amazing.
Awesome.
But I just want to say that, and now I told you this whole other part of our story, right? The Jewish journey, and then we built Accidental Talmudist starting in 2012. And by 2016, we already had a few 100,000 followers. And that's when we thought, maybe this audience would be interested to know that we're also filmmakers and that we made a Jewish movie called When Do We Eat? About Passover. So we took the trailer and put it, on our Facebook page, said, by the way, we made this movie and Passover's coming. You might like to see it. And immediately, hundreds of comments started coming in saying, that's your movie? We love that movie. We watch that movie every year.
Oh,
That's
and
awesome.
only that. And then Amazon Prime became a thing, and we threw it up on there, and it went gangbusters. And that's when we found out that our movie did become the Jewish It's a Wonderful Life, and it is a cult classic. And there are thousands or hundreds of thousands, an ever-growing number of people who do watch When Do We Eat every year as Passover comes up. And we never knew.
wow.
We never knew that the movie had become that by word of mouth alone. Only,
That's great.
It was unknown to the filmmakers.
That's great.
That must feel like redemption a bit.
Oh yeah.
For
It's
sure.
funny. There was this movie Sugarman. Did you ever see Sugarman? It's a documentary about this American, I think Mexican American singer, folk singer.
Oh,
who had brief.
Looking for
Right?
Sugar Man or Finding Sugar Man.
Yes, Looking for Sugar Man. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And he had this brief sort of folk rock career in the 1970s or something, and ended up being a construction worker in Detroit. And meanwhile, his record, caught fire in South Africa, and he was an absolute rock star, and he had no idea. And he was doing demolition on homes in
That's so
Detroit.
funny.
And then they found him, and then they brought him to South Africa, came out in a stadium with 50,000 people cheering him and knowing every word of his songs.
That's
Can you imagine that? So we never had that moment, but it's kind of like that.
Not yet.
So cool.
Not yet.
That's so cool.
So I want to experiment with something here. So first of all, I have to say, I was amazed to find out that When You Eat was your first movie, because like you said, the cast is incredible.
Yeah.
So to get those actors to sign on to a movie of a new director, I assume is not easy to do. But there was so the whole movie is great, and it goes between being irreverent and being very poignant at different times. And there's one scene in the movie that really struck a chord with me that I want to play here. It's about 2 minutes. It's the scene between, and it's to set it up. It's the scene with Max Greenfield, who is a new member of Chabad, and his grandfather, who is a Holocaust survivor. And they're sort of debating the utility of faith and religion. And I love the scene. And I just wanted to, I'll play it. Obviously, you know it. I'll play it so our listeners can get a sense of it. I'd like to talk to you about it for a bit. So let me try this here.
Could have been more joyful.
What joyful? This in the fatal love me, love you business. Nonsense. And you thank God for deliverance, you maniac. The Egyptians only wanted to enslave us, but the Philistines wanted us dead. So did the Babylonians, so did the Greeks, so did the Romans. Then came the Inquisition in Spain, the pogroms in Russia, the Nazis in Germany, who put numbers on my own. Killed Ira's mama and his two brothers, David and Emily, and his sister, my little Maggie, who made the sun shine. This is the history of the world, my friends. When you thank God for saving you, you better mean it. Because if the children and the children's children of all those bastards could kill us here and now, they would.
Rabbi, I don't think that's what the Rebbe meant by great joy.
And nuts to the Rebbe.
Grandpa, the enemies in every generation are the forces that hold us back from becoming the man or woman that we want to be. Anger, prejudice, lust.
Those are feelings. The bastards are real.
Feelings are real, Grandpa, and they lead to all kinds of problems, even war. The Rebbe says be joyful, not just because God saves us, but because joy frees us from those forces. I'm talking about real joy, deep joy. If we could all tap into that for just one moment, we'd be a light unto the nations, and that would be the end of war.
Fantasy.
So I absolutely love that scene. Could you talk a little bit about that and what it that scene, like I said, the movie overall is pretty irreverent, but that scene in particular to me really stood out as really a very deep meditation on this push and pull of the utility of faith and who has it, who doesn't, and what's the use of it in the real world.
Mm.
Wow. Well, first of all, thank you for that, and for playing it and having so many thoughts and memories about this. I mean, it was a debate for us whether to include such a scene, because it's a comedy. The movie's a comedy, and that scene is not very comedic, right? And there's a lot of laughs before it. There's a lot of laughs after. But could we have such a scene? And from my point of view, not only can we must. Right? That's the Jewish experience. I mean, vacillating between these tremendous joys, the simchas of weddings and births and bar mitzvahs, etc., and the calamities and the tragedies and the persecutions and the pogroms, and that's just so interwoven in the fabric of Judaism and Jewish history and Jewish tradition. What's funny about that is that not only was that happening in the story on screen, then people and audiences very much go on that journey still, but behind the camera. So because this was essentially a dinner party movie, a lot of it was on one set. I mean, there's stuff happening to the family before and after the dinner, in this tent in the backyard that would be kosher enough for Moses, as the mother wants to, get her Baal Tshuva's son to come home for dinner in the non-kosher home. But she goes out of her way to make it all possible. But because it was so much of it was in that one set, there was no reason to shoot out of order, right? When you make a movie, there's a story that transpires on the screen, but you don't shoot in that order. You shoot according to the availability of actors and locations, etc. And the actors are always having to place themselves. Okay, where am I in the script? What's going on? What's my emotion? What happened before? What's happening next? But, something that takes place in one location, okay, you can shoot that part of it in order. So it's a long dinner. There's a lot of sniping and sarcasm and jokes going back and forth. And then we go into this deep, dark middle of the story. And if you're shooting that in order and there's 11 people at the table and you have to shoot so many camera angles just to cover the conversations among them, what it ultimately meant was that for a week, we were shooting this scene,
Wow.
or this part of this scene. And so, for several days in a row, there's no laughs on the set. And it's like, what kind of movie are we making, Sal? Because this doesn't feel like a comedy.
Right.
With very strong comedic actors with great comedic chops. And they're like, this isn't a comedy, Sal. And a few of the actors kind of rebelled. And it was like the set shut down. And they're like challenging me. And I'm, like you said, a first-time director with some very experienced actors. And I have to justify to them what we're doing. And I have to explain what I've been saying. This juxtaposition of comedy and tragedy is so much a part of our lives. And none of them were religious, and so they were just looking at this more as professionals. And we thought we signed up for a comedy. So when something like this happens, okay, it's normally there's nothing democratic about a movie set. I'm the tyrant. Thou shalt
Dictator.
Stand here, say this, do that. But of course you have to respect actors and they have to bring their most trusted instincts and their own passions to it. So they need to be heard. And it's like everybody stating their opinion on this question. And, and I'm dying because like every minute on a movie set is like just money going in the garbage can, that we are not shooting. So many people waiting around, the crew, like,
Oh my
what's
God.
going on? Like, hey, make your movie. It's an independent movie. You only have 20 days to get this thing done. What are we doing? Sitting around talking. And then what's funny is that in the movie, the scene that you didn't play, that eventually, like, they're so shut down, they can't go forward. Then there's one non-Jew at the table, right? The oldest daughter's girlfriend, right? The lesbian daughter and her girlfriend, played by Cinda Williams, amazing African-American actress, who she was probably the most religious person on this set. She takes her Christianity seriously. And in the movie, she's like, hey, what's going on here is deep and profound and it matters. And let's keep going. And behind the camera, once everybody had talked, Cinda Williams said, excuse me, may I say something? And I was like, yes, please. She says, how many of you have worked on trash? Now she's got everyone's attention. And I mean trash. I mean, how many of you have acted in garbage movies with terrible scripts about nothing? And everybody's like, me. Raises their hand. And she's like, well, that's not what this is.
Oh.
This has substance. This has faith. This is incredible. I'm so proud and honored to be here. And this really matters. Can we get back to work, please?
Wow.
That's amazing.
And it just happened on the set, just like in the movie. And that's how when we got back to work, and soon the laughs were rolling and everything was copacetic. But it was such an amazing experience.
That's
when
awesome.
the set mirrored the story.
It's a really cute movie. It's a really cute movie. I really enjoyed it.
It's great.
Yeah.
Highly recommend.
Usually I cringe.
Very good.
Usually I really cringe at like the portrayal of Orthodox people in movies. It's always been like just a horror, but it didn't bother me. He was funny and like it just touched the right note of like being awkward and a bit annoying to the rest of the family, but not like in a way that I was like, oh, this is I definitely didn't feel offended by it. So shut up, New York Times.
Well, wait till you see Guns and Moses.
Yes, I'm excited for that.
Proper action thriller, and very much we take Orthodox Jews seriously as real people, multidimensional. A Jewish man, who's not nebbishy, who's sensitive and lovable, but strong and kicks ass when he needs to.
Oh, I love it.
A Jewish woman who's beautiful and sexy and smart. And not overbearing, but is a real teammate. Strong women who pick up a gun when they need to, and
do you already have that?
Women.
Do you already have that? That's cast already? Because I mean, I could be.
It's shot already. It's coming out this summer.
Oh, you were just describing someone, so I thought maybe.
Well, I think if you're gonna do Guns and Moses 2,
yeah, I'll be in it. No, that's awesome. That's awesome.
That's great.
I
I'll
guess-
send you
Yeah.
guys the trailer after. We haven't released it yet. We're going to release the trailer just probably next week when we announce the release date.
That's awesome.
Oh, awesome. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And we'd love to have you back on once it comes out and to promote it. That'd be awesome.
Terrific.
Great.
I have a last question. I don't know, Jay, if you have a last question, but I
have a last question also. So you can have your last question.
Okay,
and I'll have
fine,
my last
fine.
question. As long, Sal, are you okay on time for a couple of minutes?
No problem.
Okay, good.
Okay, all right. Cool.
I'm having a great time. You guys are awesome.
Oh, thanks.
Thank
we
you.
know. No, I'm just kidding. My last question for you is, because, I work with Jewish college students and I spend most of my life in education, Jewish education and engagement. What can we do in your mind to help young Jews just become interested in our tradition, the learning part of it, right? Like, what can we do differently that so many young Jews are so illiterate in Jewishly in a time when there's so much access? Do you have any ideas? Can you solve this problem for the Jewish people right now?
It's definitely it's quite a problem. It's quite a problem. A book that was very meaningful to me in my journey, Rabbi David Aaron. You guys have read him, The Secret Life of God. And he's since become a friend, and he runs a yeshiva in Jerusalem. And my son ended up spending a year in his yeshiva. But Rabbi Aaron talks about how, Jewish ignorance has become so, it's such a plague of our people. There's just so much ignorance that they're like captured babies. Like, you can't even blame them. Like, so many Jews now are like imbibing Jew hatred from the people around them.
Yeah.
And demonstrating against Israel on the campuses, our own people doing that. It's just a disaster. So how do we engage them? Well, I think that, first of all, I think the main superpower that we have for Kiruv, for doing outreach, bringing Jews into the tradition, is Shabbos, is our Shabbos table. The first thing is to just get them to a Shabbos dinner. And to just soak in the warmth and the love and the songs and the tradition and the teaching, coming out with short, accessible teachings that feel like something that can inspire a person to want them to have more and learn more. And then learning with a person, one-on-one. Partners in Torah, wonderful organization. My wife has had a learning partner for years. She passed away, but now she took on a new learning partner.
Wow.
She used to be the mentee. Now she's the mentor. So I really recommend that organization. A friend of mine, and let me just mention this because it's so important. A friend of mine who's Jewish, we're really very close friends for many years. He never really got involved, but he was always curious about the tradition. We have interesting conversations. Then he got very ill. And very ill, just a bad cancer. I visited him many times. He was just really curious about Judaism. We definitely had Torah conversations. And I just never thought to talk to him about what was going to happen to him when the battle with cancer ended. And he did die. And then his brother called to tell me. And I said, okay, when's the funeral? And he said, yeah, we're not doing a funeral. He's going to be cremated. Like, for people that don't know, our tradition, that's one thing we do not do.
Right.
And Chabad rabbis are not pushy ever about anything except this.
Yeah. Yep.
We just do not let our people be cremated like the Nazis did to us, which was not a coincidence, by the way. They knew it was a total affront to the Jewish soul and the Jewish body to burn the body. And we tried so hard to save him from that. And ultimately, we were not successful. But two things came out of that. Number one is that another friend of his and my friend David, he never became religious, but two of his friends did. And now we've been learning Pirkei Avos on a weekly basis in memory of David so that his soul should have an elevation in the world of souls. And we said we would make a video for Accidental Talmudist about why Jews don't cremate, why Jews bury their dead, why that's so important to us in David's memory, so that he would get the merit of that. And we were and this was last year, and we were planning to make that video, and I was just so busy with the movie and stuff, and Passover was approaching, and I said, well, we'll just make the video after Passover. and we were in the kitchen cleaning for Passover, and I mentioned the Shabbos urn, right?
Mm-hmm.
The hot water urn in the kitchen. And all of a sudden it started like pouring out boiling water on the counter. Like, like the electric mode that you don't use on Shabbos, where you press that
Yes.
button and it just
Yes.
pours boiling water out by itself.
Oh my gosh.
Boiling water on the counter. And Nina's like, what? And I said, don't worry, honey, I got this. Like I unplugged it, cleaned the ends or whatever, plugged it back in. 30 seconds later, starts pouring boiling water on the counter.
Oh my God.
This is really weird. Unplug it, Google, known issues, chef man urn, pouring out hot water. No one's ever heard of that issue. That's not a known issue. And then I got it. It's like, David is telling us, don't wait till after Passover. You said you were going to make that video, make it now. And Nina's like, what does David have to do with an urn? And I'm like, oh, he's in an urn.
Oh my God.
Just a trick of the English language, right? That the word urn is used for both things. And it's a known thing. It is a known thing that when people die and leave this world, very often there's weird sort of electrical phenomena that goes around. So many people have had experiences like that. Someone dies and then something electric goes weird in their house. And I told you my story with my grandmother. So I was like, no, this is David communicating that. And so I quickly made the video, like right then and there. I mean, I had the ideas already, and I said, this is why Jews don't cremate. And normally we wouldn't release a video on a Friday, but we did. And it went pretty viral, and it's had many 100,000 views since then. And dozens and dozens of people saying, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that Jews don't cremate.
Wow.
I will not cremate my parents. I will not be cremated.
Wow.
So all in David's merit, we were able to save a bunch of other people from cremation. So I'm sorry if we're running a little over, but
beautiful.
It is important that people in your audience know that.
We're fine.
Wait, I want to say one thing that in my house, my students laugh because we call it a chinik. I guess, I don't know if it's Yiddish or I don't know why, but we call the coffee, or the hot water urn a chinik. And my students think it's the funniest word. Between that and a blech, which is the metal piece that we put over the fire on our stove, they think it's hilarious when they hear us using those words.
I never heard that word before. Chinik?
Chinik, yeah. That's a Yiddish word for it. Yeah.
Oh.
Anyway,
I didn't know that one.
So I'll chime in on the education question. Not it's with my minor league point of view.
Yes.
So I've actually been thinking a lot about this recently, and a lot of it was from I recently read a letter in the scroll by Rabbi Sachs, and this actually really crystallized something in my mind. Was that I'm sure Sal had roughly the same experience being more of a Reform Jew growing up. When before your bar mitzvah, you go, and Tuesdays and Thursdays I had language lessons. Learn the language, learn Hebrew, learn to read, learn to speak. Sundays you go to Sunday school, you learn the Bible stories, etc. But the one thing, and Rabbi Sachs's book really crystallizes for me that we don't teach young Jews is why they should be proud to be Jewish and what their inheritance is. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the loss of faith in Judaism is also correlated with a loss in the belief of Western culture overall. Because Western culture is built on Judeo-Christian values and Judeo values in particular.
Yeah.
And the fact that we don't teach young Jews that that's their heritage.
Such a good point.
Is really, I think, is a massive miss in how we educate young Jews today. And I think it's something that we should be thinking about integrating into the curriculum that I think is just as important as the language and the Bible, but that they come from, if you appreciate our culture, which I think is one of the issues, don't think a lot of them do appreciate our culture.
Yeah.
But if you do appreciate this culture of equal rights and justice before the law and these types of things, that comes from Jews.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that we really need to start thinking about. How do we integrate that into Jewish education?
That's really important.
Amen.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Amen. Is it in that book? Is it in the letter on the scroll that he writes about how some cultures have 1,000-year-old palaces left over, or, walls or cities, but the Jewish people have the text that I remember a beautiful passage that he wrote. I haven't looked at it in a while, but that stuck with me for all this time, that we don't have that kind of, especially since the diaspora, whatever, but we have the texts and are just, we have so much to offer humanity and our own people, and they're not even, it's so sad.
Absolutely.
But,
America.
They don't.
Yes.
America.
Yes.
America is an outgrowth of those values. The founding fathers thought very much that America was a kind of promised land based on those biblical values. Free of the corruption of the British crown, that this would be a place where those values could blossom.
Another great book on that topic, on specifically America, is the book Ark of a Covenants.
Yes.
By
Walter Russell Mead. Is that who wrote it?
Walter Russell Mead. Yeah,
it's a great book.
And the fact he writes about the early settlers to America, the European settlers, they read the New Testament, but the New Testament is a book about an individual.
Yeah.
And the Old Testament is about building a society. And
exactly.
That was the book they used to learn to build the American society, was the Old Testament, because that was the guidebook. That was the blueprint for that.
Right.
And again, if you appreciate America, you should understand what the roots of that are, and that's comes from our tradition.
Yeah, and the people who are going to put themselves in opposition to these kind of timeless biblical values are people who are going to put the individual first and say, no, what the world is all about is follow your bliss. So if it's something you feel like doing, it's right and you should do it. And that's more important than any responsibility you might have to the society around you. And I think a lot of the kind of, very destructive values and sort of anti-religious fervor that you see, in the mainstream media and academia, is really based on, I want a system that tells me I can do whatever I want to do, and be with whoever I want to be with, and put my thing in whatever I want to put it in, for lack of a better term. And it's just so interesting how many people, realize that might be a shortcut to bliss, but it is not a plan for building a joyful and actually free society, right? Real freedom does require some level of service, right? Bobby Zimmerman.
That's right.
Would say you got to serve somebody. And if you don't serve, something that's timeless, you're going to end up serving something that's going to destroy you from within.
Absolutely.
Wow. Well,
wow.
I could talk forever, but I actually have to teach a class at noon on campus, which is exactly what we're talking about here. So
yeah. But yeah, I feel like it could go on forever. But
I know.
But we definitely want to have you back on, Sal, when Guns N' Moses comes out, and we can
awesome.
And I do
promote that.
I would like Sal to meet my dad. I think it would be a funny pairing of. My father's a very irreverent kind of Chabad rabbi, not very different than the Schwartzy type, but very irreverent in his own way. So,
hey, listen, let's arrange a special screening of Guns N' Moses
in Long Beach. Oh my God, that would be awesome. Yeah.
Oh,
yes,
that would be
yes.
We could do it.
I might fly out.
Yes,
I might fly out for that.
Yes.
For sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Sal. Really, really appreciate it.
Thanks, Sal.